not holding a bigger turbo. I'm disappointed.
Yeah, I need to have like one on my shoulder, like Rob Dom's, like Rob Dom's picture, just with the smile.
Yeah,
That'll be. I'll change that to my profile picture, just like you did.
yeah, right. Like, I still have that, and I still haven't found a better one because like it's not like that's such an epic picture in my opinion. Like it's such so awesome, but like
It
for the
is.
new side of it, it's like I can't do it with like an intake manifold or a big ass throttle body or like I guess I could just be holding camshafts like they're like chopsticks, just before. But like that's so far down the road that I have no idea.
You could hold an intake manifold like it's a like 4 to 8 barreled shotgun. That's pretty much the only other thing I could think of.
Yeah, but hello and welcome to the show. We're back to back weeks, and we have multiple human persons on the show. This is like a record for us in the last like 4 months. But with me as
We
always, we
we
have the
got our
Gregson.
collective crap together.
Yeah, and with joining us today is actually an individual that has known us longer than shifting lanes has been a thing. Actually, much longer. Friend from way back, car enthusiast extraordinaire. You know him from chat. Our good friend Andrew. Andrew, how you doing today, my friend?
Doing fine, sir. What's going on?
You are. Greg and I are going to take our
Thank you,
lead. You
sir.
entertain me. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, have fun.
Uh,
No.
should I
Imagine if
dance
we
or
just
something?
like swan dive off the side and just let the entire stream go.
Bye.
Like that was our plan the whole time, and Andrew's just like, so what's up, guys?
It's like that part of Wayne's World where have you ever seen that episode of Scanners where the
No.
guy's head explodes? Yeah, in the movie he's like, when Garth is left on the camera by himself and he's like,
Oh
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That's right.
He doesn't
We
know.
just do that and watch Andrew pull in like $17,000 worth of Facebook stars out of absolutely nowhere.
Mine.
That would be amazing.
you're welcome.
Your cut is 1%. It's our channel, damn
Thanks,
it.
bud.
No.
You know what? I'm down.
Legally binding. He said it. So
Yeah. New turbo will be purchased if that happens.
Perfect. Perfect.
that was the thing from last week. You're going through all like the pricing of it. It's like, yeah, I think for like 4,500, 5K, all in could be completely finished, done, done, done. And I was just sitting here thinking, my supercharger cost more than that. like let alone everything else.
Well, I mean, on my car, it's I mean, it's not like we're going to town on a high performance V8 engine, really. It's kind of just, okay, here's a turbo. It's not big. We're not talking, Cletus levels of turbo hugeness, and it's
And I
basically
would
just a
imagine it's
swap
just
in.
injectors, right? And then injectors.
Honestly, I mean, it's an intake, it's a manifold, it's intercooler, it's some injectors, and it's a turbo, and the car's already tuned. So for 5K, it can be done installed, honestly. Yeah, and it's not like you're going bananas with it, right? Like you said, like this isn't like a turbo LS or a turbo Coyote we're going for here. It's just a swap in. So we're going for maybe another 100 horsepower at most.
Is it a turbo manifold or is it just a turbo? Like, is it attached to the manifold in that car? Or is it separate?
So I think actually I don't know.
Because with the Volkswagen stuff, it's one piece.
Yeah, I think it's all one piece. The way that the V70R was, where they had like the two pieces were like separate. It wasn't just like one big old turbo. It was like a full thing, but it was also going into the manifold. So, I actually forget how it is on this car, but it's not like I'm just slapping a Garrett in there and we're good.
Lame.
No, I got you.
Yeah, I know
Yeah.
the C30 was a turbo fold.
Yes.
So no, but
Turbofold. I do love that term.
which is why like the most people went for like the K16 upgrade was because it's literally just a bigger version of the
Right.
KO6 that came factory from it. Yet another Volvo that was criminally under turboed from factory.
Yeah. That's right.
So insane to me. But we have Andrew with us, and as you guys could tell from the title and thumbnail, he enjoys himself a Volkswagen. I guess the question to you, Andrew, is the how, the what, the why, or are you just a glutton for punishment?
I don't know. I think, well, as you guys remember, we went to all school together, really. I mean, from basically, we met each other in middle school because we grew up on opposite sides. Actually, no, Chad and I went to elementary school together.
I was going to say, you guys went to Old
and
Farmers,
then,
right?
Right, that's right. And then I met Greg in middle school because in the town we grew up in, there's two sets of at the time, now there's three, but at the time, two sets of elementary schools, and then everybody literally comes down into the valley to the middle school, and they all meet each other for the first time. So Greg and I, am I allowed to out you as a geek?
Oh,
we were in the band. We were in the band together.
I'm 40. I'm 40. I literally do not give two flying shits what anyone thinks about me anymore. So you can out me as whatever you'd like.
I played the trumpet, and Greg played saxophone.
Secretly like sobs over Volvos.
And then let's see.
No, Chad, no.
And then Chad, we just knew each other from kindergarten.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I can't think of how we met each other. We just knew each other the whole time.
Yes.
Yeah.
We were in the same class growing up, and
whole thing.
You know.
Yeah, I mean, literally from day one.
Yeah.
So why Volkswagens? I don't know. I think I was not, as you remember, I was not a car guy growing up at all. I mean, I could have given two you-know-whats about car stuff. By the way, I'm just going to say ahead of time. Are we allowed to swear, or should I watch my mouth?
Watch the F-bombs.
Don't swear for the first 20 minutes. After that, it's pretty good, but don't use the F word as a comma.
Got it. We're from New Jersey, so that's hard to do. So growing up the first few years of my life, I mean, I was not a car guy at all. And then as soon as I kind of had my own choice of what car I get, I was like, I've always liked Volkswagens. And the goal was always a GTI. I always liked the GTI. But the first Volkswagen I got during college, when my first car died, as you guys remember, I had a 1989 Volvo 240 as my first car, which was the hand-me-down from Dad. That car died with the transmission went on that car, not the engine, at about 325,000 miles on the way back from college once.
I mean, that's a pretty good run, let's be honest.
It's a good run. And it leaked oil like the Exxon Valdez. I mean, that car was something. And then as soon as I had the opportunity to get the car I wanted, the GTI was out of reach financially. I got myself a 2006 Passat, which doesn't sound cool, but it was a VR. And it got me into the VR world. That car then got T-boned during college at an intersection. Guy ran a red light. And then I ended up with a 97 Jetta 2-liter.
Those late 90s Jettas are sweet, actually. Big fan of those.
Well, you can call it sweet if it has a VR.
Well, right,
The 2-liter ABA, although it's like the 2.5 now. It was the reliable engine, right? It wasn't. That was
people are starting to play with those
2.5s
now, though. I've seen a lot of people messing around with them, getting decent power out of them.
Well, the 2.5 sound cool. The 2-liter sounds like awful.
Yeah.
So
that's Jesse's car from Fast and Furious, right?
Correct.
Right.
And that car in the movie, interesting fact, not a VR, 2-liter ABA
with no front brakes, or front calipers, I should
among
say.
many other things. So then I went from that car to a massive upgrade. I went from a 97 Jetta with a bum transmission, because anybody who knows anything about those cars knows that the 5-speed transmissions in those cars are made out of paper mache. And went to a 2008 GTI, which had a CD player, and it had air conditioning that worked. And it had an aux input and all of these really cool things that worked, because my air conditioning and all of those things in the Jetta did not work. And it had power windows. My Jetta had cranks.
Luxuries all over the place.
Oh, yeah. And that was the first car I ever bought with real money, like a car payment, real money. And I still have it. I still have that car. It has 200,000 miles on it now. That's now the fun enthusiast car.
Right.
So that's the car story. And then my daily is a 2019 Tiguan, the dad car.
Nice.
So I'm full in on Volkswagen. I'm a glutton for punishment. But when you own all metric tools and a VAGCOM, you're in good shape.
There you go.
So that's my Volkswagen story. I just liked GTIs. That was it. It was I saw GTI. It was the poster car for me.
Honestly, if you're gonna like Volkswagens, GTIs are the car, because it's. I mean, I understand that there are more iconic Volkswagens. I understand that there might be better Volkswagens in other certain ways, but I mean, at least for me growing up, the Volkswagen was the GTI, right?
Well, yeah. And for me, the poster in my bedroom was not some supercar. I was always weird. I had a GTI poster in my bedroom. I always wanted a GTI. The red stripe, the whole thing. It was cool. And I liked it. I always liked funny European cars. I think that's what it was. And then when I got a GTI, the funniness continued because the Mark 6 was out when I got the car. But I bought a Mark 5 used because it was weird. I liked the Mark 5. And if you know your Top Gear references, the Mark 5 is when arguably the GTI came back from the dead. Because they kind of made it fatter and slower over the years. And the Mark 5 was when they brought it back to kind of where it needed to be. So I wanted a Mark 5 because I saw it on Top Gear and I was like, I want me a Mark 5.
Yeah.
Now, looking back, nobody likes the Mark 5. The Mark 5 is the weird one with the weird headlights and the tail lights and all that weird stuff. But you know what?
But it has physical buttons.
Because it's weird.
Which
it's true. It's true. It's true. I have a buddy with a Mark 8 and he went to the dealership and got a steering wheel replaced. Just hated it. But so yeah,
I would have done the
that's
same
my
thing.
Volkswagen story. That's the why behind the Volkswagens. Why? Because.
It's a weird because. Not gonna lie. Not gonna
All
lie.
right.
It's like
I like it. I follow it. I'm down.
It's like I'd like the JDM scene, what they're doing with small engines and stuff. I just want to pay 40% more for everything. Give me that experience.
Yep, and have to buy all of your parts online now and not be able to get them anywhere.
Yeah.
I have a really fat account on FCP.
I was just gonna say,
Sponsor me.
Thank Car Jeepus for FCP Euro.
Oh, and I take full advantage of the lifetime warranty.
Oh yeah, I can only imagine.
Full advantage. I have 4 Volkswagens in my house. 2 2008. My wife is into Volkswagens as well. 2 2008 GTIs and 2 2019 Tiguans.
Nice.
So, yeah. So my
literally
FCP account
his
is
and hers
fat.
of car pairings.
Exactly.
Nice.
So Anthony has a soft spot for the old Beetles, which I think most car enthusiasts do. He only ever owned a Mark I Cabrio. Yeah. Why?
Well,
Interesting.
That is one of the cars.
I mean, I think Anthony's owned every car at this point.
I mean, a Mark I Cabrio is rad just because it's weird. Because it's got the GTIs. Like when guys modify those are cool because you can modify them to be like a convertible GTI. Now, again, I see Tad's face. I see you over there. And you're like, cool? Whose definition? Mine.
Guys, there are Sweet 16 present.
No, but okay, if you lower the crap out of that car and put rad wheels on it and do a GTI swap on it, yes, please. I'll take 2. I think they're cool. And then a lot of guys VR swap them because there's a kit for it. And yeah, I mean, to me, that's cool. Now, to other people, it's not. And that's what's cool about the whole car enthusiasm in general.
Yes.
I am, no offense, Chad, not into V8 muscle cars, but I think yours is rad, right? I got to ride behind it, and man, does it sound good.
It's all about what you like, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Now, the wagon scene, though, I can get down with.
Yes, that's right. We should all be driving hot wagons and nothing else. That is the goal. That is the goal for the Wagon Elitist Jerks Facebook group. which I am a big part of.
You can go to the dump with your trash really, really fast.
Exactly. I went to the recycling center today and dropped off some rechargeable batteries that are completely dead.
Bouncing around in the back of your car.
Yeah, shit was flying in the back of my car, and I'm just like, I don't care. It's a wagon. This is great. Love it. It was fantastic. It was the fastest battery recycling trip of all time.
What I think the coolest, your car in particular, because I've had the opportunity to also note I'm saying not next to it, not in front of it, behind it, because both of your cars are way faster than mine. It makes it the cool thing about that car is and you've said this to me, and I know you've said it on the podcast and video multiple times, is unless you know what it is, you have no idea what it is.
That's the coolest.
You find yourself looking around for where the noise came from, because it makes a great noise, and you're like, was that wagon that made that wonderful noise? Yes, it was. Cool. And I think that's one of the cool parts about that car is you don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And Chad, I mean, on the other hand, your Mustang, everybody knows where the noise is coming from.
As the good morning.
Yes, they do.
And I'm just saying that from the standpoint because it looks like a car where the noise comes from, right? What I like about the Volvo is it doesn't, and I think that's
right.
neat.
It's that like sneakiness, that sneaky performance. I think that just encompasses Volvos as a whole, right?
No, that car, no. Does it at least have 5 lugs? Just see that, but see that's a Mark 3.5 Cabrio. It's like a 9. It's like an 01.
Where? Hang on, I'm trying to look. No, there we go. I'm trying to. I'm having like view issues on my end, and I gotta like go to our actual Facebook page to see like what it is.
That's
there we
the
go.
one.
That's
a Mark 1 Cabrio. That's a Mark 1 Cabrio.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that Mark 3 is Yuck City.
Yeah, it's
the Mark 1 Cabrio is cooler just because it's like, well, that's just a little 2-door thing.
Yeah, the Mark 3.5 is a weird car because it has it's a Mark 3 underneath, but it has Mark 4 body panels basically.
Yeah.
And it was only the Cabrio that they did that.
I like this because Chad, shut up. This is rad, apparently. I like the little disclaimer. There's a disclaimer at the bottom. It says, "This is rad, apparently. The viewers of Andrew and Gregson do not reflect that of shifting lanes."
I like it.
Yes, it does. At least 1/3 of shifting lanes likes this. Shut up.
I think it's cool. I don't know.
So
the only thing I'm not down with is the white convertible top.
Here's the thing. Yeah, I was gonna say this car with the white convertible top removed is actually super rad because it looks like it's got a roll bar, which it does. It has natural body fender flares. It's sitting on 1552 tarmacs, which it looks like. I mean, honestly, this looks really cool. Quite frankly, like I would much rather have the GTI version. Mark 1 GTI because it's just cool, and I would rather do this to that than have the Cabrio. But this is rad, honestly. It looks well done.
Well, and because here's the thing, it's a looks car. It's not fast. It doesn't sound good. I mean, like a lot of guys, as I said, will swap VRs into these things, which is a death sentence because. It turns a car that has no business with even 172 horsepower in it. You know what I mean? Like that car was built to have 90 horsepower.
Yeah.
On its body.
Yeah. 172 in that thing is wild sounding.
Am I right on that? VR6 172 factory? I think
you're going to have to be more specific. They made 1.8 million of them and they put them in everything.
The correct one, which is the 12 valve VR.
Which is which one? The 2.5 or the 2.6?
The 2.8.
The 2.8
12 valve.
That's the one. Okay.
Even the 12 valve sounds lumpy. It's the sound in my opinion. The 24 valve sounds kind of smoother, which is
Mm-hmm.
If you like it, you like it. And then the 3.2 24 valve is what's in the R32.
That's the one. That's just what I was going to ask. Which one is in the R32? Is the
3.2 liter 24 valve.
So that's my favorite one because that's the one that sounds
That's
like
the
it's,
Wookiee.
yeah, that's the one that sounds weird, and that's probably my favorite one. And if it's done right, it sounds ridiculously good. It sounds like it sounds like Volkswagen Jesus gargling stones. It's great.
Yep. Because it's the displacement makes the noise louder, but it's the 24 valve that gives you that Wookiee. The 12 valve is much more
right.
Throaty rather than it doesn't shout as loud, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Chad, what was the one that we saw at Carlisle during the exhaust competition? That's the one that I know you really enjoyed that one. I think was it an R32?
Yeah, it was a turbocharged R32.
Okay.
Yeah. Which if you look way back, Matt Farah did a video with a R32 with like an HBA kit on it, an HPA kit on it. HPA Motorsports, they do bolt-on stuff for the 3.2 liter VR6s, like bananas setups. I mean, we're talking, for Volkswagens, this is a lot, like 600 horsepower or more.
Oh. Those cars, that's a lot.
And they sound like, I'm just going to say it how I'm thinking. They sound like a sexual experience. I mean, just, they sound like you think you're having a crisis when you hear one go by. Like it's.
Put that disclaimer back up.
Yeah.
I mean, okay. Let me put it to you this way:
when you ask about the finest exhaust noises of any car, the VR6 is always on everybody's list.
Oh yeah,
no matter what
it's top 10 for everyone.
People forget about that it's in a Volkswagen that you don't necessarily like the look of, right? Yeah. And forget about the reliability of the engine. It sounds good. Period.
It combines like the JDM straight six sort of tone with that sort of pulsy nature of a Subaru. You know, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not a smooth note like a straight six, but it's also not as deep and unequal as a Subaru exhaust. Like it's that I will give Volkswagen their flowers on the VR6. It is one of the best engines. I'd love to play around with them. And one of the there are so many. We've talked ad nauseum about like the demise of Hoonigan and the exodus of all like the people that made it what it was. But one of the things that like I would have loved, one of the casualties of it that I really wanted to see finished was Scotto was building a AE86, I think, coupe with a VR6 swap. And I really wanted to see that thing finished.
So you hit the nail on the head unintentionally. The cool thing about the VR6, and this is, I'm not telling you anything new, is that it was 6-cylinder engine in the package size of your 4-cylinder. So you could swap it into anything. You can swap that engine into virtually any Volkswagen of a similar era. And if it doesn't directly bolt in, which sometimes it does, there's a kit for it. And that's the thing, is you can take your Mark I Cabrio and drop a VR6 in it. And it fits.
Right.
And it doesn't kind of fit, it fits.
It just does fit.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that Mark I Cabrio was made even the latest one, so you can get Mark I Cabrios up until like 93, believe it or not. They made the Cabrio much later. They didn't start making the VR6 I want it in the US until right around 95. 94-ish. Something. Yeah, close.
Right.
So
I mean,
the swappability is huge.
The only downside to those engines is where they put like the accessory drive.
Yep.
Because everything's on the back of the engine, much to the very similar to the engine in your car, Greg.
I was just gonna say it's exactly how my car is, except for the air conditioning compressor, which is on the side, and it's run off a belt that's run off the cam timing, which is the dumbest thing ever. But that's how it works.
Well, and there's so many design flaws in that engine. There's a tube, a plastic coolant tube in those engines that Volkswagen owners not so nicely refer to as the crack pipe. And it's buried under the intake manifold. And because of the expansion and contraction, you're putting hot coolant through plastic. It cracks, and you have to take it all apart. And
shocking.
One of the first modifications anybody does to that engine is put in a billet crack pipe. And no, we're not talking YouTube. We're not talking about DRUGS.
No, you're not. We're talking about plastic tubes in Volkswagen engines.
Don't worry. My next long form video on this channel is, I'm not joking, about Dick Seaman, the Englishman who helped the Nazis dominate Grand Prix racing in the 30s.
Well, and then you could talk about the British dessert Spotted Dick.
That's right.
But
also true.
So yeah, I think that's what makes the VR6 cool. The sound and the swappability.
It's a cool engine. It's a cool engine. It's a cool layout. It's a cool sound. If I was gonna get a Volkswagen, I would get, it would, like, bringing this all back to the GTI, the R32, because it's the GTI package with the VR6 motor in it. Like, that's right. To me, that's just the ultimate modern Volkswagen.
But what I think is interesting, though, is even like, so the ultimate car, and okay, no, don't even get me started. People are paying for Mark IV R32s is silly. It's silly. Even as a Volkswagen enthusiast, okay?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it is an all-wheel drive VR6 Golf.
I mean, correct.
Right? That is not a $40,000 car. It's just not. I don't care who wants to pay that. It's not worth that. When I have friends who are selling their Mark IV R32s, they're like, yeah, man, I could get 25 grand for this car. I'm like, to 5 people. You can get 25 grand from 5 people right now. And you have to find those 5 people who want to spend that kind of money on that car right there.
Right.
Now, granted, if you find those 5 people, they're all going to spend their money. But the prices that they're getting are silly. They're silly. And I know every Volkswagen enthusiast, if there's anybody else watching right now, is saying, well, it's worth the value you put on it. I get it. But it's still an all-wheel drive 6-cylinder Golf.
Yeah. Someone buys this car behind me for $1 million, doesn't mean it's $1 million car. It only means that it's that person's $1 million car. And that does not reflect what the market says about that car, nor does it reflect what that car's actual value is.
And moving on, like, people were super, super upset with the Mark VI when they went to a 2-liter turbo. But, like, if you look at the Mark VIII Golf R, what a car. I mean, out of the box, what is it? I could pull up the figures if I wanted to. It's right around 350 horsepower out of the box. Is that about right? You tune it, and you're getting software only, not picking up a single tool besides a computer. You're getting 100 horsepower.
Yeah, I want to say it was 325, but it was in that same realm as the STI, as the Focus RS, which were all in that 300 to 350 range, depending on what dyno you took it to.
Right, because in the Mark IV, Mark V R32, the 3.2 liter 24 valve VR6, I believe was around 240 horsepower. It's not what we think it is. It's much lower.
Yeah, no, it's not fast.
But so at some point, everybody should pull up an HPA Motorsports. I think it's a supercharger kit, if my memory serves me right, and listen to that audio if you want to hear some VR6 sexiness.
The hairs on Chad's arms just stood up when he heard supercharger. He's like, "Ooh, supercharger." Let me go find this immediately.
I thought about it for a moment, and then I was like, here's the. So here's the
It's
funny.
still a Volkswagen. You don't care.
No,
it's
no,
still
no,
a
no,
Volkswagen.
no, no.
You're
That's not.
immediately not interested.
That's in no way, shape, or form where I was going. Where I was going. It's the been there, done that, and I think I've told you this, Greg. If I was to start from scratch again and have the same budget to do the Mustang build, the silver car, do that all over again, I would go with a twin turbo kit. Just the centrifugal supercharger is awesome. It's great that it has mechanical boost ramp, like just in the nature of the way it's designed. I love the fact that you got a little bit of supercharger whine from the gear set in the blower itself, combined with a blow-off valve, because of obviously centrifugal is effectively a gear-driven compressor housing like you get on a turbo. The downside to that is, number one, they're loud. Number two, you have to be really careful with tuning them, because their location and everything, they can, on occasion, if your tune's not dialed right or if something moves or what have you, they can incorrectly trigger the NOx sensors. Don't get me wrong, that car was amazing, but the biggest thing is that with the blow-off valve, it's, we all drive, both of you have turbocharged cars. It's the wants. With the centrifugal, it's wants, because there's no wastegate diverting flow. I loved everything about it. I love the way the power is delivered, all of that. But also there's an element of, been there, done that. That's part of the reason why I'm going the route I'm going with the black car. It's like, I had this. This is cool. I originally started looking at, okay, what would the out-of-pocket be if I sold everything I had like I'm doing now and got like a positive displacement blower and everything. And then I was like, all right, well, let me look at turbos. And I'm like, well, then I got to sell the headers, all this other sort of stuff and everything. But like, no, if I had to do it again and I started with that silver car base, I'd probably go with Hellion or someone twin turbo kit. And then, because,
by the way, to answer Mark's question, the answer is yes. Wasn't the idea of the VR6 fitting to existing platforms equipped with 4 cylinders? Yes. And that's why it's swappable, obviously.
Yeah, so they put it into everything.
And then they just started adding and subtracting and putting it into Bentleys and Bugattis.
Yep.
Ferdinand Piëch. What? But like, that was his Volkswagen baby, was the VR or that concept. And just started, because what is it, the W12 that came in the Phaeton and the Continental is smaller in overall dimensions than the V8 that also goes in the Continentals and stuff like that, which, I mean, as an engineering thing, it's truly impressive. And
it's something, yeah.
But
if I'm not mistaken, just like the weirdest Volkswagen engine ever, the W8.
Yeah.
What the timing is on the back ? I think.
I don't know, but
timing is an engine out for that car, because I know one of the weird cars that Volkswagen made was a Passat. So it was a B5 or B5.5 Passat, which is like a 2000 to 2005 model, right? And they made that car a W8 in a Passat wagon. You don't see the sedans very much. You see the wagons, and they make them 4Motion, which is Volkswagen all-wheel drive. It's called 4Motion for those who don't know. So it was a 4Motion W8, and you find those on websites every now and then. Nobody wants them, because they're a nightmare.
Yeah, they are criminally one of the most unreliable cars and unrepairable cars ever made by any company, let alone Volkswagen.
Yeah.
It's like they were like,
they're sweet though.
All right,
we
can copy Ferrari.
And they sound great.
In what way? Looks, nah. Engine, nah. Engine out to do any sort of accessory maintenance or timing maintenance. Yes, let's do that. No, I mean,
that's stupid.
What I would, anyway, No, if I was to build a Volkswagen, it would be a slammed all-track with the turbocharged VR6 in it. That's the Volkswagen.
Yeah.
Okay.
The wagon. Well, it has the factory wide body on it, similar to like the XCs, if we're speaking Volvo E's.
Yeah.
So you color match everything, get it on good suspension, VR6 noises, all-wheel drive.
Yeah, I almost bought one. But the problem with the all-track is it had because they discontinued it, the 1.8 liter turbo, not a 2 liter.
Mm-hmm.
It was so awful slow. And the only thing that made it better is it had a DSG. DSGs are Volkswagen's way of waking up slow cars. So like I had a diesel Passat, a 2014 Passat that Volkswagen bought back. And I let them take it because I basically drove that car for free for 4 years because of what they paid me.
It's pretty awesome.
It would have been a stupid choice for me not to take the buyout. Right. The only reason that I would not have taken the buyout is if I loved the car so much, but it wasn't. It was my commuter car. I could have given a crap. So I took the buyout and I drove the car free for 4 years. And for example, that car, diesel, slow, had a DSG in it, which made it drivable in terms of a fun standpoint, because at least it shifted fast. It was slow, but it shifted fast.
Right.
So you're right. You're without knowing it, Chad, you're 100% right. You have to, for that car to be any fun, the all-track, you have to swap it because it's so slow.
Right. I mean, that's the nature of, we'll just say, my brain.
Well, yeah. The other problem I had with that car is, because if you can't tell on camera, I am not a small man. That it is so small inside. It's still a Golf. Yeah. And I ended up buying a Tiguan instead because it was roughly the same money, and it had space in terms of like a practical dad car.
You dads and practicality.
I know. But see, Chad behind him, he gets the best of both worlds. He made better choices.
That's right.
I mean, thank goodness I have a secondary vehicle for this time of year.
I was going to say, Chad, you have, but Chad, you have, Greg, you have one car though, right?
For me, yes, we have two for the family.
Right. I mean, it is hard to argue with the Volvo in terms of the do everything car, like the fun with the practicality.
Any wagon, really. I mean, you can make any wagon fun in certain ways. You can lift them, you can lower them, do an aesthetics build, you can make them fast. I mean, you can do this with any car, obviously, but like, there's something about like the wagon specifically because it's such a bare bones sort of idea, right? You have more space in the trunk for family stuff. You have more space potentially in the cabin to haul said family. But making that into a cool thing is a cool thing. So
yeah, well, I mean, the RS6.
It's just nice.
For example, the RS6.
Right. I mean, any of those, family hot wagons, RS6, E63 AMG, the new M5 that's coming, like any of that stuff, like those, that's just cool. And what I'm really hoping for is there's this one last hurrah of hot wagons coming to the US because BMW said, quote, if the M5 wagon sells in the US, we're bringing the M3 wagon here.
But it won't. That's the problem. It won't.
Oh, I disagree. I think that thing is going to sell out instantaneously because there is so much wealth in that area that is not appropriated to where it should be. Meaning, everyone that wants to buy that car is buying the X5M and they like it, but they don't like it because they've always wanted the M5 wagon that they couldn't have when it's never come to the United States. They've always wanted the E39 wagon, which we never got. They always wanted the E34 wagon, which we never got. And all those people that want them have to buy X5Ms or X3Ms, which are fine.
Is the M5 wagon X-Drive?
Yes. So
Okay.
it's extra, it's all-wheel drive, it's hybridized, and it is over 700 horsepower.
Mm-hmm.
It weighs as much as a neutron star, but it is I think over 6,000 pounds or something. It is insanely heavy, but it still gets from 0 to 60 in 3.3, which
And
is
the people
just
who buy those,
bananas.
by the way, love that. You ready for your
Right.
interesting car fact of the day that I think Doug DeMuro taught us? You know what I'm talking
Mm,
about?
no.
Section 179 tax code, baby.
Oh, yeah,
If it's
100%.
over
I don't know.
6,000
I don't know
pounds,
if
it's a piece of equipment and you can write off all the depreciation in like the first year.
right.
Right.
I don't know if it's over
So that's
six.
why
I
a
mean, it
lot
might
of,
not be.
I think it's 6,000. I
It
think,
might. I don't
so
know.
that's why
I'm gonna look it up
6,000 is
right
a
now.
really heavy car. So I mean,
Oh
like,
no, what you're talking about, yeah, Section
is why,
179 is 6,000 pounds, but I can't remember how big or how heavy
yeah,
the M5
because
is.
everybody always wondered why are there so many wealthy people driving around in, big black SUV,
Right.
big black American SUVs and
Yeah,
Range
because it's
Rovers.
free.
It's because they're over 6,000 pounds. So they
Hmm.
get the tax write-off. Because like, if you
So
drive around
I'm
in a Range
wrong.
Rover, in my opinion, Range Rovers aren't that nice.
No, I mean they are nice, and the thing with Range Rovers is that they're nice enough, but they have an unbelievably good seating position for driving. And they always have, and they always will. When you're talking SUVs, very few SUVs have really truly good seating positions
Yep.
because of how cab forward has come into design language over the
The
years.
other thing I like about the
Range
Range
Rovers
Rover,
have not gone that route with the cab forward design. And the way that you sit in a Range Rover is drastically different than the way you sit in an X5 is versus a Bentley Bentayga, or, all these other ones. Range Rover seating positions is unmatched
and even
by
the back
anything.
seat. The back seat is raised up a little bit so you can see through the
Yeah,
windshield when you're in the back
yeah,
seat.
stadium seating. Yeah,
Yep.
I think
Is that
not pioneered, but
okay? That's a thing.
popularized in the Honda. Oh, what was that funky SUV crossover thing? It had plastic cladding all over the outside. It was like
The
waterproof on
Element.
the inside.
The Element.
Yes, thank you. The Honda Element. That had stadium seating, and that was like mainstream popularized, and everyone's like, "Oh, this is really cool. I'm sitting up just as tall as the driver. I can see everything." Like, so yeah, Range Rover does the same thing.
Oh,
It's a nice little thing that you don't notice until you're in it, and you're like, "Oh, I sort of get this now."
to answer Steve's question in the chat, going to SUV talk. The Tiguan, how is it? It's a car, and that's
They're
what I
solid.
want. It is completely boring, but it has 75,000 miles on it, and it just goes. I put gas in it. I change the oil. I do maintenance. I got to do brakes on it soon. It's second set of brakes. It needs tires in the spring, but like that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. It just goes.
Yeah, they're
Volkswagen
good
has
cars.
figured out the reliability part. They have.
Yeah.
And the newer Volkswagens, they're reliable. Period. The car does everything I want it to do. You drop down the seats, you can carry your stuff around. It fits a baby seat real nice. It does all the things you want that car to do. And
Yeah.
another way of saying it is, I firmly believe this in my life now. I wouldn't have said this 10 years ago. If you have two cars, don't modify the daily. Because
Oh
anything
yeah.
you do to
No.
modify a Tiguan makes it worse. You know what I mean? It takes away
Yeah.
it reduces its ability to be good at doing car things.
Right.
Like my GTI,
And
it's low. It has a front splitter on it. All that. It's not good at doing car things because like you can't go into a 7-Eleven without ripping the front bumper off.
right. I was
Right?
wrong about the M5, by the way. It's 5,390 pounds. So for a wagon, insanely heavy, not 6,000,
Right.
but this is what it says. The new 2025 BMW M5 weighs 5,390, excuse me, which is 1,153 pounds heavier than the previous model. The majority of the extra weight comes from the car's hybrid system, which
Mm-hmm.
accounts for 882 of those pounds. The M5's weight is also due to its larger dimensions, which includes being 1.2 inches longer, 2.7 inches wider, and 2.1 inches taller than the previous model. But even so, I still think that that car is going to sell out instantly. It is cool. It is a hot wagon that we literally have never gotten in the United States.
It's
and
a go fast hybrid system.
Yeah, it is. We have a generational wealth gap in this country that people are just going to be like, ooh, shiny new thing, and huck money at it. So I think, and people are already bored of the RS6, and people have had the E63 AMG since the beginning of time. So all of those people that are just like, I want something else, they're immediately going to flock to that thing. I think within the next 2 or 3 years, they're bringing the M3 wagon here, which the whole point to that was they're also then going to bring the RS4 wagon here. And then they're also going to bring the C63 wagon back. I think that is what's going to happen over the next 5-10 years. And then it's never going to happen again. And they're all going away.
It's actually interesting you bring up the RS4. I think as a Volkswagen guy, I like Audis, obviously. The problem with the RS6 is that, well, first of all, that wore off real quick. Everybody thought they wanted one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the novelty wore off really fast. The problem what they did wrong with that car, in my opinion, is they made it too cool from the factory.
Mm-hmm.
Like the reason I want those cars is because I don't want them to look fast.
Yes.
I want them to look like
actually.
a normal car. I want them.
I think
like one of the cool things about like a B5 RS4, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or a B5 S4.
Look like it should be fast.
It doesn't look like it should be fast,
right?
Which I think is cool. And when you buy an M5 from the factory, a M5 wagon, it's kind of like your car, right? People who know what an M5 is know, but when you drive past it, it's just a BMW wagon.
Right. And I think that's actually a really good point, and that's part of the reason why the RS6. I mean, it's doing well; it's still selling, but why it wore off really quick. I think it's three main points. Your point is one of them. It's like it was too hot from factory, and then maybe like 0.1A to that, which is my second point. Is the styling on it is I like it, but it's too much for what it should be. It's aggressive. The rear end is a little weird with the little arches going over the exhaust pipes. The front end is gaping mouth. Like, there are some styling cues that are just not really in the same ballpark as like the E63 AMG, which is aggressive looking but very classy and very luxurious. Yep. The Audi is more just like hits you in the face with the styling. So I think that was like 0.2. And then the third point is the infotainment in that thing sucks. There are two screens that are just, it is just horrible. I sat in one. I tried to play around with it. It is one of the most god-awful infotainment systems that has ever been put into a car. It is legitimately that bad. And I think people get into it and they're like, this is awesome, fast, hot Audi wagon. And then they start living with it. And it's why you see like many dozens of them on any car website that full with 10, 20,000 miles is because people got tired of them and they don't want to deal with that crap at all.
I mean, I'm going back real quick. I think something you said is, I mean, it's cool. It's cool. It's rad.
It's very cool.
But like, do I want to drive that around every day? Because it's unless you have ass loads of money. Like it's like it's got it has a shooting brake-esque roof. Like it's cool. But I'm going back to what you said. E63 AMG, copy, rinse, repeat. In terms of the formula. That's the formula.
Yep.
And if you do that, you win. This is not an E63 AMG. This is, look at me. E63 AMG, the only people who give a shit about that car are people who give a shit about that car.
Right.
This is awesome. I don't know what
nonsense it is cool.
I like it a lot. It is cool. I would drive it. But if it's my money, I would get the Mercedes. It's just a better car.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, and to be clear, an E63 AMG is the only Mercedes I'd really be interested in. Period.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
They don't do anything for me.
Or actually, that's not true. I retract that statement immediately. It's either that or the AMG GTR.
Okay. Yeah.
Any
But
AMG GT
different class
without the flat plane. When they put the flat plane crank V8 into the Black Series,
the Black Series,
Black Wings Cadillac, it lost.
Can I transition into something for you? Because we were talking about hybrid systems in the M5 while you were gone.
Please, let's talk about hybrids and not a turbocharged V8. No, I'm kidding. Go.
What now? So my question is, what kind of hybrid system, what flavor of hybrid is the M5? Is it the working together system, or is it a generator for the EV motors?
No, it's a working together system to make the car biblically fast.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's an M car. They're like, no, we're gonna make this is a torque filler. This is a get off the line filler. It's for performance reasons, not for anything else.
It's the P1 formula, if you may.
Correct. Yeah, exactly.
Still killing the. I think. I get the why. However, I think the M5s, it's too freaking big. Like, at some point, that car is going to slap you in the face with Newtonian physics. And, and I think,
the brakes must be huge. They must be huge.
Well, they have to. Well, they're huge.
I think they're like 19 inches. It's insane.
They're huge, but also keep in mind when you have on the flip side to that is that you have huge brakes, but you also have regen. So the brakes don't necessarily have to be like, if we're sitting here and we're talking about, let's just say the M5 had no hybrid, weighed 5,400 pounds or whatever Greg said, and no hybrid system. Yeah, you'd need enormous brakes on it. But with the regen, you gain back some of your braking power without actually seeing it in this form of the rotor and the caliper. But those things, they're just too big. Like, I think, and not for nothing, I think M cars in general, and I get it, everything is getting more and more powerful, right? When we were just out of college, hot hatches had 230 horsepower, and that was wow. You know, the Mustang and the Camaros were making 300 to 400 horsepower, and that was a lot. Viper was like, here's 500 horsepower. People are like, right? And now that gets you in the door, right?
Right.
Or what have you. But M cars were always the blend. They had enough power. They had a ridiculous engine that may or may not shat itself after the warranty runs out. Ask me how I know. But like, let's think about it, right? Like, you had the E39 M5, which had a snarling V8, 400-ish horsepower, right? And then you had the E46 M3, which was 320 horsepower, or almost 330 horsepower, out of a 3.2 liter straight six, naturally aspirated, in the early 2000s, when that was nuts, right? When Mustangs and Camaros were making the same power out of much bigger engines. Granted that I've always maintained that the tech BMW threw at their engine, specifically like the S54, was way too early. Like, if they did that now, it'd be fine, but like way too early. The fact that you're like shimming the intake, like all the maintenance required with ITBs and stuff, is not to mention every BMW's owner's worst nightmare, Vanos. And everything. It's just like, M cars in general have just gotten way too powerful to the point where, what's the M car most, if you've driven the M range, the most people get out and say, which M car would you buy with your own money? Most people are getting out and they're saying M2, which is
M2 comp.
You know, I mean, granted, like all BMWs, it's ridiculously overpriced, but that should just tell you something where like the enthusiast lies. Like, the M5 is too.
Speaking of which, what's the MSRP of the M5 wagon?
Who knows at this point? I actually don't even know if the prices come out. Someone in chat correct me if I'm wrong, but I want to say it's like in the 140s or 150s.
To say 150,
it's crazy.
It's got to be. I mean, I think
sweet depreciation.
And I know we always say that, everybody's saying this now, but like, it brings me hope for like cool things that are coming down the horizon with EV technology and hybrids, and the fact, oh yes, we can have fun with these electric things. Like, because 5-10 years ago, we're all like, oh, what's going to happen when the gas engines go away? It's not going to be any fun. They're proving us wrong, and I think that's kind of cool. The fact that there can be fun to be had. There's fun to be had in a hybrid if it's done right.
And muting Andrew.
Yeah. Well,
hey, the P1's a hybrid.
Well, no, but that's to Andrew's point. If we look at it, right, like the Holy Trinity, right, was LaFerrari 918 P1, right, and now that's sort of has trickled down into a BMW sedan or wagon. Like, granted, it's $120,000. It starts at $120,000, but it's there, and
GTI. Rumors, Mark 9.
But
they're going to do some EV hybridy stuff with that. And I'm like, and I know I'm talking about Volkswagens again, but I'm super excited to see what it's going to be. And the concept of the EV GTI looks cool. Like, it looks interesting. And it's I want to see where this goes. I'm not saying I'm ready to buy one, but I want to see where this goes, because conceptually, there's a lot of really interesting things that are starting to happen with EV and hybrid stuff. And I know none of us want to admit that, but it's true.
Well, I mean, interesting, perhaps. More of a...
Fast.
Well, there's no denying the fact that that when you start adding electric power to vehicles, whether it be the all electric or hybrid and things like that, cars start getting, Greg and I have mentioned this more times than, in the case of straight line performance, the game is over. EVs have won on the street.
Yes.
In a production vein. I'm not talking about, purpose built drag cars, right? EVs have won. That's it. So it becomes, what's your particular flavor of brandy, so to speak, right? Do you want that thrust back, that sensation of speed, or... And you bring up some points about where Golf and the GTI and all that stuff is going. I'm not going to say they're underpowered, because they're not. I mean, most people...
I want to correct myself, by the way. I don't think that was hybrid, the concept ID GTI. I think it was full EV. To correct myself. That was not hybrid. I think it was full EV. Sorry to interrupt.
Not a problem at all. Whatever direction it goes, because I wouldn't be at all surprised if we end up with like a hybrid GTI or Golf R, where they do the hybrid trick of one axle is gas power, the other axle is EV, and they sort of mesh them together to make an all-wheel drive system or what have you. The point I'm making is that as a Volkswagen enthusiast, as a GTI enthusiast, so on and so forth, and I mean that with the utmost respect that it is due.
Yeah, no.
Is the experience of those cars that thrust, or is it what happens in between the braking and the acceleration, if you catch my meaning? Is it that joy in the corner? And
100%, because and I'm taking the words out of your mouth from when we went on the cruise. You don't like Volkswagens, but you like mine, right? You like the way it's done.
That's a misnomer. Is that it's not that I don't like Volkswagens. It's just it's not my particular flavor at the moment. Here's what I'll say about my Volkswagen, whatever you want to call it. Back when I bought my IS300, and this was back in like 06, 05, somewhere in that neighborhood. This is really going to show you where the car market was and how crazy it was back then. The final three cars were an 02 IS300, an 02 R32, and just for a little bit more. And we're not talking like 10,000. We're talking like $3,000 to $7,000 more. An Acura NSX. Like,
interesting.
3 completely different types of cars, right? But I had to think long and hard. I love the R32. I like that. To your point, I don't know if it was the exact supercharger company that you mentioned, but like my first thought was get it, supercharge it, 400 plus horsepower. Let's go. So I appreciate Volkswagen. It's just it doesn't happen to be, you know, when I look at what would I buy, what would I do, because you know how I think. It's here's a car, but that's fine.
Right.
It's the blank canvas at which I can apply my, we'll just say, madness to. So
right. I mean, to answer your question about what is it about GTIs, my car, and again, I'm not going to be that guy who's like, oh yeah, I'm not going to overstate my horsepower. Okay. Mm-hmm. I think, remember, 200,000 mile car. It's got APR stage 2. I hate the stage things with tunes, but that's beside the point. APR stage 2. I think crank horsepower were around 285, something like that. 285. It's under 300. Okay. And again, there's an argument to be made that anything really over 300 horsepower in a front wheel drive car is kind of useless, in my opinion. Okay. And a lot of people agree with that. Like, it's just, you're asking the wheels to do a lot of things at that point, right? You're asking the car to go with the front wheels, steer the whole 9, and stay on the road. Yeah. Interesting. So to answer your question, clearly it's not power for me. It's
right, but 280
it's the street legal go-kart aspect for me. Yeah. Even stock, that car was 200 horsepower, right? When I bought that car, completely stock from a dealer, certified pre-owned. It was still real fun. It was street legal go-kart, right? It was fast enough.
Right.
But on a curvy road, it's a go-kart. And I think that's always what the GTI was. Now, one can argue that Volkswagen lost that. It lost their way at some point, which is what Jeremy Clarkson always said about the Mark V, right? It came back. It got that enthusiasm
I think the
back
biggest
in terms
was,
of spirited drive.
I think the thing is that it had basically the same power to weight ratio as the original without being too bloated, so to speak. But that's the thing I always talk about with like EV and hybrid. I'm never going to sit here and tell you shouldn't like what you like, right? I'm not going to sit here and say that if the EV future or the hybrid future of a certain type of car doesn't get you interested in it as a enthusiast or what have you. I'm never going to say that's wrong. I may make jokes, but at the core of it, car enthusiasm is car enthusiasm, and as long as you're not, adding entirely too much camber, we're good.
Right. I mean, let's put it this way. Like, if they come out with an EV GTI, I'm not saying I want one, but I'll be there on launch day to take a test drive because I want to see what it's all about.
Right.
I want to see if it gives you the fizz.
Right. And I mean,
right.
I guess part of me can also see why someone who owns the cars that you do, because for me, so much of driving a car is the auditory note.
Oh, no, right? I mean, even as a 4-cylinder turbo guy, me too, 100%. So, in other words, if it's an EV GTI, for example, the fizz, if you may, has to be there in other ways. Like, it has to handle like an SOB.
Right.
And it really has to be a great GTI before anything else. It has to be so fun on a curvy road that I forget about the fact that it's almost not making the noises I don't want that I want it to. Like, it makes it's like,
yeah.
So it's got to be really good in all the other ways.
Right. And I mean, I guess that's an interesting take, because this is one of the reasons why I like having a third voice, so to speak, is because pretty much everyone who watches kind of knows where I sit. Everyone kind of knows where Greg sits and where we fall on a lot of this stuff. But it is really cool to hear a different perspective, because
yeah, I mean, and I'm not saying that I'm ready to go out and buy an EV tomorrow. I mean, I have a lot to say about that in terms of EV maturity, right? I'm not. No way. But if you talk about what's the future, what are cool things they can do with the tech, yada, 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 all that stuff that we've all said 10 times, I think there's a lot there. I think there's a lot of potential there. And I'm going to sound like a cliche. We're still in the EV infancy, but the future's looking good. Like, if you really, really think about it, like the stuff that they can do to make it cool. Now, does that visceral part of it go away, right? The rumble of the V8, the turbo noises, 100%. And what I'm interested to see is if the EV model of car X, whatever it is, okay, it could be an EV M3, it could be an EV GTI, all electric. Is it good enough to make you forget about the fact that it doesn't make cool noises?
Right. And I mean,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well,
like,
here's
it's got to be really, really good at doing other things besides EV burnouts. Like, it's got to be good. Like, it's got to be good at being, to pick on an M3, right? Let's say it's an M3 because we're talking about Volkswagens an awful lot. EV M3, it's got to be awfully good at being an M3 in all of the other ways if you're going to tell me it's an EV and it doesn't make noises.
Right. Well, that's the thing. I think Anthony said it in chat, and then just real quick.
Got to prove it to people.
Before I touch on anything else, I just wanted to... Steve, thank you so much for sending the stars, buddy. Appreciate you. You're a legend.
Where's my 10%?
All right, I'll give you your 10 cents. It's on its way. Anthony says, the benefit in EV is weight down low, usually really good weight distribution. That's really good for handling. Right. An electric GTI would probably rip. That's the thing with EVs, but inertia is a motherfucker. Momentum.
But here's the problem.
Momentum will be conserved. So
here's the problem that Volkswagen's going to have with an electric GTI, for example. One of the things, and I'm going to use Jeremy Clarkson quotes again because they work. You're going to drive the kids to school and then drive home like you sat on a wasp. In other words, it has to drive like an SOB, but also be good at carrying around a chest of drawers in the trunk, right?
Yes. I
have to want to drive it on a curvy road just as much as I want to drive it on a long trip, right? It has to do that. That's one of the critical points of a GTI, is that it has to do all the things. So in other words, in a small car, if it can't do 300 miles, not interested. Like 100, if it does 200, because one of the things about other sporty cars, even an M3, let's just say there was an M3 EV, if they came back and said, oh, it can only do 200 miles on the charge, the M3 folks would say, cool, I have another gas-powered car and I don't care, as long as it rips, right? GTI, got to do all the stuff, just like GTIs already do. I got to be able to drive it to New York City and back on one tank, right? If it can't do that, then it doesn't work.
Right. Well,
that's where you lose me.
That's the thing with even
on EVs altogether.
Well, it's the name you put on the EV. For example, the M series of cars, M cars became highly popular not after the E30, because what most people don't tell you is that the E30s were, as an everyday thing to live with, terrible, because they were a race car for the road. It was when they gave you that, and Ford and Shelby went through this with the GT350 being the race car and the GT500, making you think you're in a race car. Is all things to all, like you said, kids to school, shops, work, home, kids, insert sport here,
right?
All of that on one tank. It's going to be interesting.
Volkswagen did something interesting. They did something interesting that struck me, is that they didn't call it the GTI. It's the ID GTI. So in other words, they're not saying it's a GTI because somebody's going to come back to them and say, this is not a GTI. And they're going to say, no, it is the EV. It's the ID GTI. It is not the same, right? That's what they're going to say. It's in the marketing.
Yes.
They're going to come back and say, well, no. It's not really a GTI. It's the ID GTI. So it doesn't have to be a GTI. It's the ID GTI. It's its own thing.
Yeah, well,
which is BS.
Right. It's slapping a Mustang badge on a crossover and saying, no,
same thing.
This is a Mach-E. You Mustang
That's
people. Right. No. Mustang is now a brand. And then blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
They're going to use it to excuse it. Yep.
Yeah.
I think...
when did this turn into an EV conversation?
It always does, and it's annoying as hell.
Well, the thing is, here's the deal with that, though. Like, that is... It's the new thing, and it's what everyone's pushing for, including government, manufacturers, blah, blah, blah. So it's now this thing, instead of it naturally trickling into every single manufacturer's repertoire, it is this thing being foisted on everybody that not everybody wants. And that's why it always comes back to that conversation, is because we as humans want freedom of choice. We want freedom of buying power with our own money. When we are told with the second largest purchase that most people will ever make in their entire life, that you are going to have to buy this instead of what you potentially could want or choose, that is a huge issue for absolutely everyone on the planet. So that's why the conversation always comes back to it, because it's a tremendously hot issue, and it is a tremendously just I can't think of the word. It's just a tremendously annoying issue, because people don't necessarily want this thing that they are being forced to potentially do. That is now, of course, backtracking with almost every OEM and most government bodies around the world, but still, it's still a hot button issue.
And the part that's most annoying to me as a Volkswagen guy is that Volkswagen's EV strategy is straight up dog poo. It's
most
awful.
of them are, honestly.
Well, I mean, like, it's just bad. Like, as a Volkswagen person, I'm like, okay, they tried it, their first real public foray into EV/hybrids. They did a Jetta hybrid. Awful. Then the ID4 is so bad. Like, I went to the dealership on launch, when I lived in Massachusetts, I went to my local dealership on launch day to go check it out, because that's what I do. And I'm looking at it and I'm going, why? I'm just so, I'm so uninspired. It's just some car. Like, it's nothing interesting. Like, meanwhile, you got, whether you like it or not, you got Tesla over here, who, whether you like the design language, whether the quality control, all the stuff we say that's negative about Tesla, they're doing interesting things, right? They're doing things. They're doing cool things. They're trying things. They're experimenting with this technology to see what it's got.
Mm-hmm.
Volkswagen just comes out with this, and it's just like, well, I can tell you what it is. It is a direct product of the diesel settlement.
Right.
Because Dieselgate, part of that. Well, no, it was the lawmakers that are making them do it as part of the, I think it was $18.2 billion settlement. They had to have an alternative energy plan, right, to make good for all of the baby seals that killed with diesel engines, right?
So many baby seals.
They had to make good on it, and the government basically said, you have to have an energy plan. You have to have an EDV, an electric vehicle plan. And now they're executing on a half-baked, ill-conceived, just kind of like meh EV plan. Like, there's nothing to it. Like the ID4, it's selling, but it's not. You know what I'm saying? Like
that's EVs
it's selling.
in general.
Like the dealerships are out of them because they're not making a lot of them.
That's EVs in general, though, is that the demand for them has gone like this. Like we've mentioned it before, how their EV demand has plateaued. The people who want
because
EVs,
the smart money is waiting. The smart money is waiting until later this year.
There's that. There's also an element of where they are price point wise for the most part, and most people who want an EV have an EV. Until they start to become more obtainable and things like that.
An ID4 is like, nicely equipped. It's beside the point that they named them like iPhones, right? It's like a Pro and a Pro S and like, okay, stop.
So does it have 4 backup cameras if you get the ID4S?
Yeah, right. I know. Is it like, is there a telephoto backup camera and a wide angle backup camera?
How many cameras do we need exactly?
It's like $42,000.
Yeah.
Which, price-wise, right there, right on point. Like in terms of the comps, it's there, right? It makes sense, but it doesn't do 300 miles. That's the magic for me. 300 miles. I think it's
that's the magic for that's the magic for everyone, and it is. I don't know. It's a
for me
weird. It's a weird notion that
it's the regional thing, right?
It's I
live near Hartford, Connecticut. Okay, 2 hours to New York City, 2 hours to Boston.
Right.
I want to be able to do that in one tank. Right.
Right.
If I can't do it in one tank on a daily, not interested.
Right. And that's the biggest thing is EVs are great for, and I've waxed I don't know waxed, but
it's great for a commuter car.
Ad nauseum,
hands down,
on this show is there are certain use cases for EVs that make so much sense. I am the prototypical person
Me too.
for an EV. I don't take long trips. I make tons of little trips all day long to the grocery store to pick up my kids.
We're dads.
Well, right.
And you live in New Jersey. I live in Connecticut.
The other part of that is I also work from home. And a lot of people are now working from home. There are many people that have returned to work and blah, 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 blah. But the pandemic showed a lot of people that you don't need offices to run certain industries and sectors. For certain things to happen, and for certain people, EVs make so much sense. If you live in a city and need a car, EVs make a ton of sense because
for me it would. My commute's under 10 miles
otherwise. Each way. Right, exactly.
My commute is stairs.
Right. Chad, your use case for an EV is actually quite good too.
Or
because
my use case for
a commute.
Or my use case for a rear-wheel drive V8 powered muscle car is also very high.
Also true. The thing is that like the 300-mile thing is we so really, rarely drive 300 miles with our cars that it's become this huge sticking point with EVs, and you don't need it. You just don't. If you have an internal combustion engine car and an EV, which is what most families that are 2 or more people do. They have 2 cars. Most families in the US do that. That's not me saying that. That is legitimately demographics. An EV plus an internal combustion small SUV is all you need, period. And once the EVs do get above 300 to 400 miles of range, that is the tipping point where you would see most people doing that because they think they have this preconceived notion that 300 miles is what you need. You don't. A Nissan Leaf,
that's fair,
basically can give you or anyone that needs an EV, don't need an EV, but could use an EV for certain things, that is all you need. 100 miles of range is it. Just plug it in at night, use your internal combustion for everything else. That's all you got to do. But the other thing here is the price point, because most EVs are priced out of everyone's budget at this point. Used EVs are going to be the next big thing, I feel.
So doing math, right? My Tiguan, my dad car, typical daily for like a lot of Americans. It's a very average car. If I'm doing 25 miles a day, let's say, between grocery store, commuting, and anything else, okay, which is probably about average for me. And this is what I'm seeing, the number I got. 16.8, it does about 400 miles a tank. It's got pretty good gas mileage, okay? That's 16 days. Now, that's what I'm actually seeing. I'm getting gas every 2 weeks because I don't drive a lot.
Right.
So we take 300, let's take 250 mile range divided by, and then that's 10 days. Now, if I said to you, hey, do you mind charging every 10 days? Most people would go, no, that's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And then people are like, well, I don't have a charging station right across the street from my house. I don't have one at my house. Okay. So you're telling me that I'm actually going with you on this argument. I wasn't before, but now we're on the same page. When you actually think about it practically, right?
Yes. You got to do the practical math.
I have a Tesla charging station because we live in the Northeast, and I'm sure you do too, probably have a Tesla charging station within 15 minutes of your house.
Definitely, yeah. There's
Right?
one.
I have one 5 minutes from my house. Okay, I have like the
Right.
latest revision Tesla charging station right off of I-84 near my house. Okay,
Right.
and if you told me I'm going to go over there and sit there for 20 minutes every 10 days, okay, now we're talking. Like that's the practical head check. So you're right. I never really thought of it that way, but you're 100% right. Because I think to use my gas-powered vehicle usage as an example, I think I'm average. I think a lot of people, in especially our part of the country, are driving 25 miles a day.
Right.
They're not driving 300 miles a day. They're not.
Yeah, nobody is. The only people doing that are in the Midwest, and they all have trucks to do it. They would never have EVs unless the EV has 1,000-mile range. Like, there's no way. And the amount of people that do that is a very small percentage of actual commuters in the United States.
Well, I mean, like, to agree with you, my wife at one point, because there was a job opportunity that was so good, and I was still working in Boston, right? We lived right outside of Worcester at the time, in Massachusetts. She got a job opportunity near Springfield, Massachusetts, 80 miles each way because it was that worth it,
Right.
money-wise and opportunity-wise. That was 160 miles a day, not average.
Yeah, not average, and definitely not something
That's an
that
edge
you
case.
would want
That's
to
my
do
point.
in an EV, because if you're
Right.
commuting that far, which I would wager a guess, that's definitely less than 5% of the population doing that commute.
1% of the population, probably.
Right. So you're not. That is a very small percentage of the population doing that. Yet it is the 90th percentile argument that everyone uses
Against
which
EV.
is
Yep.
so hilarious to me. And I'm not an EV proponent either. I like noises. I like gas engine. I like the good stuff. But like the arguments against some of the stuff that people that don't do the mental gymnastics on it are just really funny to me, because the people making those arguments aren't the ones that are ever going to have that come up in their lives ever.
Yeah. And then like as a parent, right? We're stopping, like if I'm driving 2 hours to go see my folks near where you guys live, right? In New Jersey, which they don't live far from you guys, right? I'm saying that for the people listening. I'm already stopping at a rest stop on the Merritt Parkway for 20 minutes because I have a 3-year-old.
Right.
So if I need to top off my charge on the Merritt Parkway, which all have Tesla chargers at them, every single rest stop on the Merritt Parkway, I can.
Yeah.
And in the Northeast,
the Merritt Parkway, i.e. the Nordschleife of New England. Continue.
Just gonna say, it's basically
the speed limit on that road.
The
speed limit on that road, I think, is 55. Like, you get run off the road unless you're doing 70.
Oh, yeah. I don't think I've ever been on that road and gone under 80 because I'm doing 80 in the slow lane.
And it's everybody. It's not just the people who want to go fast. Like people.
It's the
like
grandma and
ripping
the
down the Merritt.
doing this. Real quick, not to cut you guys off, but a couple of things real quick I wanted to touch on.
We went full diatribe on that. Full diatribe.
Yes, please get a word in edgewise, Chad. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yes. Number one, I hate both of you. Number two, Anthony, thank you so much for the 200 stars. And he just leaves the message, which is aimed at Greg. Moist, you're a legend.
I love you. I also hate you.
Secondly, and more pertinent to the actual conversation is someone going to drive 300 miles a day?
No.
There's a
Some
very,
people
very,
do,
very...
But very...
That's the same type of people who would say it's like, say an EV needs 300 miles of range or bust. It's kind of the same type of people that's like, I do a 150 one-way commute every day, so I need a car that gets 70 miles per gallon, right? Like, it's very small, but in terms of the general populace, the marketing side of it, just the general nature.
It's got to do what my gas-powered car will do, or
yes,
otherwise I'm not interested.
The people do not. It's the barrier to entry, right? They do not want to feel like they're going backwards. It would be kind of in a similar case to where Volkswagen said they have a brand new GTI coming out, and this one's got a turbocharged 1.5 liter 3-cylinder that makes 210 horsepower. Now it might be lighter. Let's just say it's lighter. And it's actually quicker around it. No, just gas powered. So it's basically like, think of your car with a smaller engine and lighter.
I'm going to stop you. Volkswagen people are weird. They buy it anyway. So your argument doesn't work.
But
and I'm actually dead serious. I'm not even joking.
Right, but
like they'd be like,
in a hot hatch in
that's
general.
Cool. Right, but Volkswagen people are weird. They'd be like, ooh, 1.5. If I tune it, that means I can get almost 300. And I'm going to save money on gas. They actually think that way. Like, it's weird.
Right. But like we've said so many times.
But go on. Sorry.
If, in general marketing terms, Volkswagen is not necessarily marketing to you in this case. They have you.
Yep.
They know you will be interested in it. They know your kind will be interested in it. It's to the general public. And the general public would look at a car like that and say, wait, it makes less power, And I'm not, and again, it's not the right way of thinking. It's just the way the mind works. People don't want to look at something and think immediately downgrade. And it might not have been it'd be like if someone came out with a Mustang and it's like, we now have a 3.9 liter V8 and it makes 350 horsepower. Like people don't want, it's that perceived downgrade. I'm not saying it's the correct way of thinking. It's just the way the human mind works. It'd be like, let's just say hypothetically a cell phone provider came up with a way to make you spend less money, but it started charging, or it started giving you plans with limited amount of text messages again. Now,
thank you for saying again, because if you're a certain age, you remember that.
Or after 10 o'clock, you could text and call all you want. But the point is let's just say hypothetically the base price is as such, and you could send the same number of texts you do now, and you'd actually be paying less. People wouldn't go for it. And the last example I will use to prove this is I think EV marketing in the 300-mile range is akin to when Burger King came out with the third pounder.
Oh, yeah, I remember this.
If you took a third is bigger than a quarter pounder. Most people of average intelligence know this, right?
Right.
The problem is the average intelligence is only about half the population. So people weren't buying the third pounder because they thought it was smaller than a quarter pounder.
3 versus 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And stuff like, so that's like the general mindset. Now, for EVs to be successful, I think they have to be able to consistently cross that threshold, if not more. Because even the people who think, yeah, I don't use it all that, but what if I need to, let's just say Sandy happens and it's coming up, and this time it's hitting New England a little hard as opposed to New Jersey, right? Somebody's going to want that extra range to get the hell out of town and be able to do what they need to do. Is that a once in a decade type of scenario? Yes, but that's the way people think. And
yeah, I mean, there's also like, again, if we're talking about edge cases, let's do it, right? I mean, like, there's also
we're
like
now edging chat. Continue.
Yeah,
Edge me, baby.
When I lived, the last hurricane that at the time I lived in Connecticut, I forget, was it Sandy? May have been. And I filled up my gas cans because I'm like, what if the power goes out, right? because they were saying the power was going to go out. It did end up going out for 2 weeks, right? Fill up my gas cans, could get to work, right? So you can't fill up your gas cans with your EV. I keep saying, by the way, I work for Amazon. We call our electric delivery vans EDVs, electric delivery vehicles. So that's why I keep saying EDV by mistake.
I thought you were just into electronic music. Well, no, you could. All you need to do is you bring the cans of gas, your small heavy-duty generator, and you're good.
To bring it full circle, Rivian, Amazon vans, Rivian.
Doug brings in a good point, though. I think charging speed is more important than range. A smaller battery but faster charge means lighter and, frankly, more in line with filling a tank of fuel. Yes, yep. And to kind of put a bow on this before we shame Greg, which is what we usually do at this point in the show, is that EVs will be a sort of seen as a not actually luxury, but as a luxury item by the populace until they can match what a gas car can do, whether it be range on a tank of fuel or speed at which you can get a full tank of fuel.
Bold prediction. It will come to the mainstream when there's an EV Corolla that works.
See, you say that
for the right price.
I would I would amend that to
a Joe Public car, right?
Yes.
Like a Corolla or a Civic, right? When they can make that work at the right price with the right range, that's when people who buy those kind of cars will start to get interested. Do you agree with that? Because I think that's the golden ticket, is because they haven't released like an EV Civic or an EV Corolla yet, because I don't think they know, because the marketing department's smart. They know they don't have that yet. And if they come out with an EV Corolla or Civic too early and it doesn't do what those people who buy those cars need it to do, they're out. Like almost forever.
Yeah, I mean, I
know I'm speaking big words.
I think the base of what you're saying is that EVs will see, that's all well and good if you happen to live within a relative short drive to a ocean. The problem is I'm sure you've seen the maps, and we just went through an election where you see where half the population lives within a certain distance of the oceans, and the other half live in the middle.
80% of the U.S. population lives on the East Coast,
and that's
a staggering number, by the way.
Right. So, I think until you can figure out the way to having the everyman EV, whether it be a Corolla, whether it be a small crossover or whatever, take whatever car is selling in the highest numbers that isn't a pickup truck. Tried it, failed, shocking. As far as like the average person is purchasing, is infrastructure. There's too much. I think for most people, it's the range anxiety is one thing, but is the infrastructure there, or is the infrastructure growing in such a way that?
Yes, I'm going to go on Team Greg. Everybody's saying the infrastructure's not there, but if you go with what I just said, which is like, I don't know if this is true, but what I do know is that 80% of the U.S. population lives in the Eastern time zone on the Eastern Seaboard. Let's take a quantum leap.
Scott,
in this part of the country, we have a lot of interstate highways. On those interstate highways are a lot of charging stations.
Thank you, Roosevelt.
Specifically Tesla charging, which by the end of the year, a lot of the manufacturers are going to be switching over to the standard. Okay? So you have all these chargers available, all these fast chargers available. Is that malarkey? The fact that the infrastructure is not there. For 80% of Americans, I say it probably is more than we think it is. Going along with Greg was saying about the range. I think
yes, but
that's a little.
Can you go down? Too. Yes, these charging stations are all over the interstate network, as you've mentioned, or they will be growing in significant numbers. Let me ask you this question. You run out of gas in your car, or not running out, but she's like, hey, I need to go fill up my tank for the week or for the day or whatever, right? do you want to go and get on an interstate to go fill up your car, or do you want to go down the block to insert Joe's gas station here and have that capability? Now, we've said this a bunch. You don't need to have a gas station. You could have these charging ports outside of a Panera, outside of a supermarket, outside of a whatever, right? As another income stream for these businesses, number one. And number two, that's the real estate is already available there. You don't have to have an EV charging station next to this giant tank of exploding liquid. Not that it's unsafe, but
in this part of the country, that is the case.
That's
my argument. Is that in the Northeast corridor specifically, at Panera, there's a Tesla charger, literally.
Right.
At a Panera, like down the street from my house. And by the way, I like James, one of our hometown friends.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
By the way, James Mulvihill,
his argument is good. His argument's really good.
Dude.
Yeah,
and that I was actually going to call him out. I think that is actually going to be.
That's a very intelligent comment.
That was going to be my argument, and sort of a counterpoint to yours, Andrew. Is interstate does not mean infrastructure. I think the thing to Chad's point is like we still can't go down the block and fill up our EVs. However, we can do that at home, which is sort of similar to. But I don't believe that the infrastructure still is there. I think it's on its way, and I think that the what they're doing with standardizing the NACS charging to the Tesla thing, that is one of the 3 biggest hurdles to EV mass adoption, because from up until 2024, every single EV could potentially have a different way of charging, with different ports, with different places, with different actual electronics, with different not just the port itself, but different actual the charger itself. Like there's Electrify America, there's the Tesla charger. There's so many different. Do
I have the app? Is it set up for payment? All that stuff. Like it's a pain in the ass.
There are different gas stations, but it's still the same thing.
But they all have
car.
a round nozzle that fits in my car.
Correct.
Yes.
And now the EVs have that standardization, or when we went from Lightning to USB-C and they did the adapters or whatever, now that we have adapters and it can be standardized from here on out, that is hurdle number 1. Hurdle number 2 is the infrastructure. And I do want to go back to the range thing, because the range thing, I think, to your point, Andrew, about the Corolla, or it was the Corolla, right?
The everyman car. Yeah, like the Corolla Civic. Yeah.
I don't think the car matters. I think when we get a 400-mile confirmed EV,
400 miles with the radio blasting, the AC blowing cold air.
Correct.
When it's 5 degrees outside.
400 confirmed from the manufacturer, realistically 300 plus. That is when it is game over for internal combustion, and that is when it is game over and everyone's going to go to EV. But we don't have that, and I still don't think we will for another 20 to 30 years, because solid state's not ready. It's coming, but mass production of solid state is not anywhere close to being 1% of anything EV production at all. What a lot of people miss about this is the economies of scale. When we say that we're getting stuff, it does not mean we're getting stuff. The amount of time to bring something like this to market is between the average time to bring a car to market is 7 years. To bring a totally new technology to market and make it the thing is 50 to 100 years. That is the normalcy of things that get into our everyday life that we're so accustomed to, and yet we just keep refining it and refining it and refining it. Yeah. So like when this happens, I think it's going to be 2040, 2050 until that actually happens.
And then you have the potential, don't want to get political, the potential of overseas tariffs coming down the road very soon that could potentially have a major effect on for example, Asian chip importation and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yep.
Then you've got the fact that COVID still is messing with the timeline of chip manufacturing. They're still catching up, right? And I'm not just talking cars, I'm talking everything, right? I mean, friggin' Wi-Fi chipsets for cell phones, okay, are backed up, right? Everything is still messed up from COVID.
True.
When in that sector. So you put all that together. Yeah, I mean, I think I know we're talking minutia, but like I think your timeline may be a little wrong, but you're not completely off. I think it's
I mean,
10 years. I think it's 10 to 15 years, but
I may be over-indexing on it, but I'm predicting longer because I don't see bureaucracy catching up to it in the way that a lot of people think that it's going to happen.
That, but also when does it get to the point where our parents, my mother wants to buy an EV,
right?
And my mother, and to be completely factual, my mother is a tree hugger.
Well, not for nothing.
Like card carrying tree hugger.
Most retirees, grandparents are, to you go back to Greg's point, the perfect case study for
and
EVs.
my mom is a tree hugger who drives a Subaru Crosstrek, which totally fits.
I was just going to say which Subaru
that checks out. Okay, Subaru Crosstrek, but she's not ready for an EV. She's not ready.
Slap a
Subaru
badge on it. It'll be fine.
And also, she's smart enough, and I think a lot of people are, to know about all of the side effects of EV manufacturing. People like her are.
Yeah.
Right, in terms of the mining of the
consult a physician to see if EV is right for you. Do not.
Can we change the subject? Like, we really need to get off.
Do not buy an EV if you are allergic to EV.
Going. We keep talking about EVs. I'm going to be getting on a wait list for a Tesla.
I'm waiting for something to run on liquid gold. Just melt down gold, put it in my engine, and let me combust the most precious metal on Earth. I'll buy that. Screw it.
Bugatti's working on it.
Bugatti or Pagani, one of the I's at the end.
Let me put it to you this way: I do not, and we always end this with this sort of sentiment or what have you, and that is, like, we've mentioned all the hurdles that EV marketing, right? Like, for the most part, the hurdles to EV is not engineering, it's marketing at this point, because 90% of the population, 200 miles of range on a daily basis is plenty, right?
Plenty, yeah.
Yeah.
And the ability to charge at home, the ability to charge locally, the ability to do all of those things is there, right? We're talking 10, 15 years for mass EV adoption or what have you. 50, because until you can get an EV that, no joke, and I know this is way overshooting the mark by 400-500%, until you get an EV that on one charge will go 1,000 miles, people are just going to be like, look. And when you combine that with the fact that a lot of intelligent people will look at their old car and be like, it's more kind to the environment to just run this thing until it's death than to buy this brand new thing, whether it be an EV or not. So you have to overshoot people's expectations. You have to just blow it out of the water to where it's like a number that people are like,
yeah,
okay, all right,
that, you gotta take their excuses away.
Like, to that. And not for nothing, I don't think there ever will be mass EV adoption unless, like, we see it every 4 to 8 years. The political pendulum in this country shifts, right? It swings one way, it swings the other. I'm not saying one's right, one's wrong. I'm just saying it swings. So we're leaving EVs to a more relaxed approach to that. And during the next cycle, will it swing back? Or, like, it's the part of the problem is just the country we live in. And this is nothing against America. I love it. Bleed red, white, and blue. I'm wearing a flag right on my goddamn forehead. I'm just saying, when you have our form of government, you have these things swing. So what do most presidents do the first year they're in office? they undo everything they don't like about the previous one.
Right.
And then it goes back, and it swings back and back and back. And yes, EV's technology will kind of, I think, mirror cell phone development in the sense that technologically is exponential, not linear, right? It's a curve, not a straight line. And we will get to a point where a battery is half the size and gives us twice the range. You know, solid state promises that, whether we get that full
go
efficiency.
Along with your point, and the nerd in me knows this. There used to be, we all know what Moore's law is, right? It used to be computing power doubles every 24 months. That's what they used to say. Computing power doubles every 24 months. Not anymore. Not anymore. I mean, if I told you 20 years ago, the laptop that I have in front of me is probably 4 or 5 years old, it's fine, right? Now, the nerd in me knows, okay, maybe I need an upgrade. Fine. But like, for all practical purposes, I'm good. But if I told you 15 years ago that a laptop would still be good in 5 years, no way. Inconceivable. Because it's not doubling anymore. It's incremental, to go along with what Chad was saying.
We've plateaued a bit.
And to go along with the cell phone, which underlines what Chad was saying, because we are all of a certain age, 41 by the way, and I know we're all over 40. Jeez, we're old. But we were in a universe where how long did it take us to be like, to get away from our physical keyboard on our phone? We were like, oh, I don't want a touchscreen because I want my physical keyboard. I want my BlackBerry. I want my physical keyboard. I don't want a touchscreen.
About as long as it took Steve Jobs to conceive the iPhone.
I'm a nerd, and I was on Team BlackBerry for a long time.
I did enjoy a good BlackBerry. I hated their touch. You remember their touch full like iPhone?
The Storm.
That had
the BlackBerry Storm
the clickable
was the worst cell phone I've ever owned in my life. The screen actually physically pushed in.
Yes.
It was not haptic. It physically clicked in. It was quick story about that. Really quick. So I went out and because at the time the iPhone was only on Singular, right? And I had Verizon. I lived in Vermont. I went out to a Verizon store because I wanted to get one of these new touchscreen phones. The BlackBerry Storm was the one that Verizon
I remember
had.
that freaking thing.
I owned that phone for exactly 24 hours before I returned it. It was so bad. I gave it no chance, and I bought one with a physical keyboard again. So I went from a physical keyboard to that phone, which spoiled it for me for a long time, the whole touchscreen thing. And then went back to the physical keyboard. Yeah. But my point is to use Chad's parallel. That's what's happening with EVs.
Right.
Is you've got a lot of that mindset of like, okay, it's got to be better than what I have, and I'm not interested until it's better.
Yeah. Yeah. Anthony's point is I think what we're all kind of like getting at here. The battery tech is definitely the turning point. Lithium batteries were a game changer in terms of battery tech 15 plus years ago. At this point, it's stagnant, and the push for improvement is happening. The first breakthrough is the next gazillion-dollar innovator, and that's true. Once someone figures out solid-state batteries, we're getting 600-mile EVs. Plain and simple.
Well, here's the other thing, too.
And the replacement cycle of those batteries, too, is a factor, because I think most people are smart enough to know about that now.
The thing is in terms of like lithium-ion is great, but to Andrew's point about his mom knowing how they get the lithium out of the ground, not to mention who has rights to a lot of the world's lithium stores. It's China, by the way.
And working conditions and all that stuff.
But there's also
it's pretty nasty.
There's other tech. So there are companies out there working on sodium ion, which right now is 60% as efficient as the equivalent lithium. But it can be mined in the old ways. It can be mined the same way Romans got salt, i.e., let's take all this water, throw it over here, and when it evaporates, that's what we have left. It's a little more complicated than that, but effectively, the starting product is sea salt. I think also
it doesn't involve strip mining and acid rain.
Right. And like
Right.
I tell people this all the time. It's like when hybrids first became a thing and they were using nickel cad, Google what the nickel cad mine is used for now versus oil fields. Newsflash, where they mine the nickel for the Prius, they use as a substitute for Mars. NASA actually uses it to test. So if you want barren wasteland. But no, it's let me put it to you this way, like we use the smartphone as like an indicator of the march of progress when it comes to technology and things of that nature. The shocking thing is if you look up the numbers at everyone who owns a cell phone versus everyone who owns like a smartphone, it's still the minority, right? The smartphone
Worldwide?
In general. I looked it up a while ago. And here's the thing. If for EVs, Greg, you will, in the most shocking turn of events of the evening, agree with me on this. I just do not think, I think putting all of our eggs into a battery-powered electric vehicle future is the right way to go about it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a terrible idea.
Hydrogen is an interesting route that we haven't put the same amount of thought into hydrogen as we have battery tech and stuff like synthetic fuel. What is the max production?
I was going to say Porsche fuel.
What is the max amount of production on something like that? What is the threshold for that? Can synthetic fuel be at a point to where it is within a reasonable percentage of fuel prices now? If it can be, I think you're just going to continue to see EVs be sort of a niche, regardless of how good they get.
So yeah, I think to put like a bow on this conversation and possibly the stream, because I didn't realize it's 10:30 already.
We put a lot of bows on this. We've put multiple bows.
It is the holiday season.
I think this is the Lexus bow from the commercials. This is the ultimate bow.
Fun fact about those commercials is I hated them because like I never understood who would be. You both are married. Imagine for Christmas you bought your significant other a brand new Lexus. Not a cheap vehicle, by the way. Put it in the driveway with a bow on it. Would her reaction be, "Oh my God, I love it," or would it be, "You fucking moron! What are you doing with our money?"
There's a great Saturday Night Live skit that did exactly this. It's awesome. And the guy, it turns out he's just like, he hasn't worked in 9 months. He owes his neighbor money. Honestly, it's one of the better like side skits that like they've ever done. It's hysterical. Congratulations, honey. Steve, we can't even pay our bills. What are you doing? You're an idiot. No. I think the whole thing is, it is now to me a race. Who can do this first? Create a battery that gives you all the aforementioned stuff that we've talked about on this video, podcast, stream, whatever you want to call it, or who can get synthetic fuel to the mainstream first? Whichever one wins, the other one will die. I truly think that. I think if we get solid state batteries and an infrastructure that can give us down the block charging to 80% within 5 minutes, or we get mass synthetic fuel with zero emissions, one of those things will win and the other one will go away almost entirely. Because those are just both end games. And once those things win and manufacturers grab hold of one of them, they won't make other things. They will just focus in that one area.
And may God rest him, Jimmy Carter. The one thing he taught us about Americans is he was the president during the fuel crisis.
Yeah.
Jimmy Carter. You can't tell Americans to conserve.
No.
In other words, you can't tell them that their gas-powered car that does 400 miles per tank is not needed, right? Because that the conservation didn't work. Like nobody would do it, right? And it's very interesting.
I think the whole thing honestly, I think our quote unquote energy future is a mix. I think if there's a quote unquote liquid or gas that comes from a pump, I think one will win. Think VHS versus Beta. Yes, we're old. Get over it.
Diesel had a chance, and Volkswagen messed that up, to be honest with you. Like, Diesel had a shot.
I mean,
Diesel was the answer in Europe, and Diesel's not even the answer in Europe anymore. Like, Diesel, like, even with, if properly emissions controlled, if I'm saying that a good way, Diesel's a really good answer. But Volkswagen blew it for everybody. They ruined it for everybody. Like, there wasn't a whole lot of diesel cars in the U.S. before that happened, and now there's none. And it's like, so to go along with Greg's bow, is that he's right. Whatever one wins, the other one dies, right? Because the diesel is a good example of that. They tried it. Well, make sure I get my decades right. You know, like Mercedes tried it in the 70s and the 80s, didn't work. Volkswagen tried it in the 2010s, didn't work. They messed it up. Emission scandal, right? So diesel's dead. So what's next? Alternative fuels, EV.
Right, but I think there is space, because I think if you can let's just say hypothetically, if we look at both technologies where they're at now, there's a clear winner, and it's EV, because go to the synthetic fuel pump. I'll wait. But
well, that's the thing. Yeah.
But if synthetic fuel can be made in such quantity at such a price point to where it is really no discernible change to what we have now, it will obviously win. But I also I don't define winning as being owning 100% of the map, so to speak, right? It's not completely taking over or what have you. There is a space in this world for EV tech. There is space in this world for explosive liquid tech. And to James's point in chat, there is space in this world for hydrogen. However, I think if you're forcing people to, like, gas stations to have hydrogen or synthetic fuel or both, they might swing one way or the other, and it's going to be whatever the majority of the people in their area own. And because the genie has been let out of the bottle with EVs. We're at a point where 1 in 5 cars sold are an EV. I don't necessarily think that goes away if, say, synthetic fuel, it just ends up replacing explosive brontosaurus.
I mean, I'm going to bring up like a big point here, and like, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to just drop the mic on it, because the three of us will want to debate this point more, but it's just a fact. Alternative fuels, in order to become pervasive, need to end up at like normal current gas stations. Okay, we can all agree on that, right? Like, It needs to become pervasive. Well, there's one organization that's going to have an awful lot to say about that. OPEC. Right? That's it. So, like, if there's not a way that those petroleum-producing countries can get in on the action, OPEC has an awful lot of power, right? And that's undeniable. So, if OPEC has anything to say about it, we're not going to see alternative fuels at our gas stations. That's one of the reasons. Now, do I have facts on this? No. But probably the reason E85 didn't catch on as much as it could have in the masses is probably having something to do with it was adoption by the auto manufacturers. There's really only one auto manufacturer that adopted it in mass, right? GM, because I don't think Ford did much with it, but GM did for a little while.
There were some,
but I can only think of,
but yeah, point stands.
But I can only think of one gas station within 100 miles of my house. 100 miles of my house that has E85.
Yeah.
Right.
People just didn't
that
like
was
extra
never
power.
mass adopted. Right. But that was never mass adopted. So I mean, there's a lot of corporate dollars and cents that are dictating whether we're ever going to see it.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother factor. And that's where I'm going to say, like, we could debate that, but like, let's not.
Yes. I mean, again, 85 has so much going on with it that you could say there's a corporate factor to it. You could say that availability. You could say adaptation. I think a lot of people, it was just like, it came out that if you use the 85, it's great. It's going to get worse gas mileage, and it's going to eat your fuel lines. Whether it was or not in your car wasn't a fact. That got out. People's trust in it ended. But the thing is, and I think we're now just going to wrap all of the bows with this one thing here.
Bowception.
And that is the fact that we can sit here and have this conversation and not really know, each one of us can have our own opinion on where the future goes, tells us it's just too early to tell. It's just way too many of these technologies are way too early on to know if they're ever going to replace the car that runs on a gasoline or whatever explosive liquid, diesel, gas, whatever, to replace. We don't know what's going to replace it. We've tried with a couple things and it's been like, no. So the time will tell. But on that note, Andrew, I just want to thank you for coming on. I know this has been...
It's all good.
Been a thing.
EV talk.
Next time, just going to do the stream next to my Mustang idling just to offset to increase the carbon emissions.
This stream. Yeah. Because this stream was like net negative, like not even net zero.
Oh,
like we were like
I have
very green.
I have both my PCs running. We used some energy.
Perfect.
But in that, right, again, thank you for coming on. We appreciate you.
No problem.
To Anthony and Steve, thank you so much for the stars. Thank you to everyone who watched, liked, all of the fun stuff we're contractually obligated to say by the social media platforms. We appreciate you all. Thank you so much for watching. If you're new here, we do this every week. Pay attention to this space. We talk. Feel free to come in and again, tell us how wrong we are. And who knows, if we've known you... I think the cutoff here is if we've known you since we were about 8 or 9 years old, you too could be on the show. But thanks, guys. We will catch you next week. And I will do a better job next week of letting you know which day we're going on. Because in my head last Thursday, I said, we're streaming Wednesday. Penn State has the playoff game on Thursday. Everybody knows this. Therefore, they know we're going to be streaming on Wednesday. I was wrong. So... I'll have this stuff up sooner for you guys. But for this one, that's an actual wrap